The rhythm of a dying man's breathing would become the most beautiful lullaby Ellen DeGeneres ever heard. The Ellen DeGeneres Show was in full swing that Wednesday afternoon at the Warner Brothers studio in Burbank. Ellen glided onto the stage with her characteristic energy, wearing her signature white button-down and navy blazer, her radiant smile immediately connecting with the audience of 300 who were on their feet, dancing and clapping to the upbeat music that filled the studio. The familiar backdrop stretched behind her, displaying the iconic blue sky dotted with white clouds and swaying palm trees, while the famous white chairs with their sleek black wooden legs awaited another afternoon of heartwarming conversation. "Welcome back, everybody," Ellen called out as the music faded, her voice carrying that perfect blend of warmth and genuine excitement that had made her show a sanctuary of hope for millions of viewers worldwide. "We have such an incredible show today, and I'm about to bring out someone with a story that I think is going to change the way all of us think about love, loss, and the sounds that connect us to the people we care about most." The studio buzzed with its usual pre-interview energy. Camera operators adjusted their angles, sound technicians fine-tuned their equipment, and the production crew moved with the practiced efficiency that had made Ellen's show a masterpiece of human connection and emotional storytelling. Everything was proceeding with the polished precision that viewers had come to expect from nearly 2 decades of daytime television excellence. In the green room, 29-year-old Jessica Martinez sat quietly, her hands wrapped around a small digital recording device that looked ordinary but contained something extraordinary. The device held recordings that most people would find disturbing, even traumatic, but for Jessica, these sounds represented the most precious gift her father had ever given her, the rhythm of his final breaths captured forever in digital memory. Jessica's father, Robert Martinez, had been a construction worker for 30 years, a man who built his life around providing for his family. But at 62, Robert had suffered a massive stroke that left him on life support for 3 weeks before he passed away. During those 3 weeks, as Robert lay unconscious in the ICU, the only sound that connected him to the world was the steady rhythm of the breathing machine that kept him alive. For Jessica, those 21 days had been both the most agonizing and the most precious of her life. She had spent every possible moment at her father's bedside, holding his hand, talking to him, and listening to the mechanical breathing that somehow still sounded like her dad. It was during the second week of Robert's hospitalization that Jessica had made a decision that seemed strange to everyone around her, but felt absolutely essential to her heart. She had begun recording the sound of her father's breathing. Machine, not for medical reasons, not for legal documentation, but because she realized that when her father passed away, this mechanical rhythm would be the last sound that connected them, and she couldn't bear the thought of losing it forever. Using her smartphone, Jessica had captured hours of the breathing machine's steady cadence. The sound was rhythmic and constant, 2 beats of inhalation, a pause, 2 beats of exhalation, another pause, then the cycle would repeat. It wasn't naturally human breathing, but somehow it carried her father's essence, his presence. The nurses had initially been concerned about Jessica's recording habit, but as they watched her sit beside Robert's bed, sometimes synchronizing her own breathing with the machine's rhythm, they began to understand that this young woman had found a way to maintain her connection with her dying father. When Robert passed away on a quiet Thursday morning, the silence in the ICU room had been deafening. For 3 weeks, Jessica's world had been filled with the constant sound of mechanical breathing, and suddenly that rhythm was gone forever. The doctors had turned off the machines, the nurses had removed the tubes, and Robert Martinez had slipped away peacefully, surrounded by family, but no longer connected to the mechanical heartbeat that had sustained him. In the months that followed Robert's death, Jessica had discovered something that surprised everyone. She had begun listening to the recordings of her father's breathing machine as a source of comfort that helped her sleep. The steady rhythm that had once represented her father's struggle for life had transformed into the most soothing lullaby she had ever heard. Every night for the past 6 months, Jessica had fallen asleep to the sound of her father's breathing machine. She would lie in bed, close her eyes, and listen to the mechanical rhythm that somehow still carried his presence. The 2 beats of inhalation reminded her of his strength and determination. The pause reminded her of his thoughtfulness and patience. The 2 beats of exhalation reminded her of his generosity and the way he had always given everything he had to his family. Friends and family members had initially been worried about Jessica's unusual coping mechanism. They feared she was trapped in grief, unable to move forward. But Jessica had tried to explain that the recordings didn't make her sad. They made her feel peaceful, connected, loved. The sound of the breathing machine had become her father's final gift to her. Jessica had reached out to Ellen's show because she wanted to share this story with people who might understand its profound beauty. She had been watching Ellen for years and knew that Ellen had a gift for recognizing the sacred in the unexpected. A production assistant appeared at Jessica's side. "Jessica, you're up in just a minute. Are you ready?" Jessica looked down at the recording device in her hands, then nodded. She had brought several different recordings with her, some from early in her father's hospitalization, some from his final days. Each recording captured a different moment, but all carried the same essential message, that love finds a way to communicate even when words are no longer possible. "Please welcome Jessica Martinez," Ellen announced, and Jessica walked onto the stage to warm applause. The audience greeted her with their typical warmth, though Ellen could see something different about this guest, a serenity that seemed to come from someone who had found peace in an unexpected place. Jessica moved with quiet confidence as she made her way to the iconic white chairs, the small recording device clearly visible in her hands. "Hi, Jessica," Ellen said, settling into her chair across from this intriguing guest. "I can see you brought something special with you today. Can you tell me about it?" Jessica looked down at the recording device, then back up at Ellen with eyes that held both sadness and profound peace. "This contains recordings of my father's breathing machine from when he was on life support. And I know that sounds strange, but these recordings have become the most beautiful sound in my world." Ellen leaned forward, immediately understanding that she was about to hear something extraordinary. "Tell me about your dad, Jessica." "His name was Robert Martinez, and he was the strongest, most loving man I've ever known," Jessica began, her voice growing stronger as she talked about her father. "He was a construction worker for 30 years. He built houses, schools, hospitals. He spent his whole life creating places where families could be safe and happy. But 6 months ago, he had a massive stroke that left him on life support for 3 weeks before he passed away." Ellen's expression immediately softened with compassion. "I'm so sorry for your loss, Jessica. Those 3 weeks must have been incredibly difficult." "They were," Jessica agreed, "but they were also precious in a way I never could have imagined. For 3 weeks, I spent every day sitting beside my father's hospital bed, and the only sound in the room was his breathing machine. 2 beats in, pause, 2 beats out, pause, over and over again, 24 hours a day." The studio had grown noticeably quieter as the audience began to sense they were about to hear something profound. "And during those 3 weeks, I started recording the sound of his breathing machine," Jessica continued. "I know it sounds strange, but I realized that when my dad passed away, that rhythm would be gone forever, and I couldn't bear to lose it." Ellen felt tears beginning to form in her eyes. "What made you want to record something that must have been so painful to hear?" Jessica's face lit up with the expression of understanding that surprised Ellen. "That's just it, Ellen. It wasn't painful. It was peaceful. That machine was keeping my father alive, and somehow The rhythm felt like his heartbeat, like his presence, like his way of staying connected to us even when he couldn't speak or open his eyes. "What do you do with the recordings now?" Ellen asked gently. Jessica's voice grew soft with emotion. "I listen to them every night when I go to sleep. I know that sounds strange to most people, but that rhythm has become the most soothing sound in my world. It's like my father is still there, still breathing, still watching over me." Ellen was openly moved by this story. "Jessica, that doesn't sound strange at all. That sounds like love, finding a way to continue even when everything else has stopped." "That's exactly how it feels," Jessica said, her voice filled with gratitude for Ellen's understanding. "My friends and family were worried about me at first. They thought I was trapped in grief, that I wasn't healing properly. But this isn't about being stuck in the past. This is about carrying my father's presence with me into the future." Ellen made a decision that would define this moment forever. "Jessica, would you be willing to share one of those recordings with us? Would you let us hear what your father's love sounds like?" Jessica looked down at the device in her hands, then at Ellen, then out at the audience of 300 people who had become completely silent with anticipation. "I would be honored to share it." Jessica pressed play on the recording device, and suddenly the studio was filled with the gentle, rhythmic sound of the breathing machine. 2 soft mechanical breaths in, a pause, 2 breaths out, another pause, then the cycle repeated. The sound was clearly artificial, clearly medical, but somehow it carried something that transcended its mechanical nature. As the recording played, something extraordinary happened in the studio. The audience, initially uncertain how to react to such an unusual sound, began to find their own breathing naturally synchronizing with the rhythm. Ellen closed her eyes and listened, and after just a few moments she could understand exactly what Jessica meant. There was something profoundly peaceful about the steady cadence, something that spoke to the most basic human need for rhythm, for connection, for the assurance that life continues. After about 30 seconds, Jessica gently turned off the recording. The silence that followed was profound, not empty, but full of understanding and respect. "Jessica," Ellen said, her voice thick with emotion, "that was one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard. Not because of the sound itself, but because of what it represents. Your father found a way to give you a lullaby even when he couldn't sing." Jessica wiped tears from her eyes, but she was smiling. "That's exactly right, Ellen. Every night when I listen to those recordings, I feel like my dad is tucking me in, like he's still taking care of me." Ellen stood up from her chair and moved to sit directly next to Jessica, taking the young woman's hands in her own. "Your father gave you something incredible, not just the recordings, but the understanding that love doesn't end with death. It just finds new ways to express itself." She turned to address the camera directly. "Ladies and gentlemen, we just heard something extraordinary. We heard what it sounds like when love refuses to be silenced, when a father's care for his daughter transcends even death." The audience rose to their feet in spontaneous applause, not because they were prompted to, but because they had witnessed something sacred, the power of love to transform even the sounds of medical machinery into a symphony of comfort and connection. Ellen looked back at Jessica. "Do you think your father knows that his breathing machine became your lullaby?" "I know he does," Jessica said with quiet certainty, "because every night when I fall asleep to that rhythm, I dream about him, and in those dreams, he's always smiling." The episode aired exactly as it happened, becoming one of the most emotionally powerful segments in Ellen Show history. The clip was shared millions of times across social media, with viewers from around the world commenting on Jessica's unique way of staying connected to her father and the profound beauty she had found in the most unlikely place. But the real impact of Jessica's story went far beyond television ratings. Within weeks of the episode airing, Ellen's show was flooded with letters from people who had found similar comfort in unexpected sounds. The story inspired a movement of people sharing unusual ways they maintained connections with deceased loved ones. 6 months later, Jessica returned to Ellen's show with an update. She had started a nonprofit organization called Love's Rhythm that helped families create memorial recordings, not just of breathing machines, but of any sounds that carried special meaning. "How has sharing your story changed things for you?" Ellen asked during the follow-up interview. "It's helped me understand that grief isn't something to hide or apologize for," Jessica said. "Love expresses itself in ways that might seem strange to other people, but that doesn't make them less valid or less healing." Jessica had kept the original recordings, she explained, but now she thought of them differently. "They're not just my father's last gift to me anymore. They're my way of understanding that love truly never dies. It just learns to speak in new languages." Ellen hugged Jessica again, marveling at how this young woman had transformed a symbol of medical intervention into a testament to eternal love. "Your father would be so proud of you." "I know," Jessica said, her voice filled with peace. "I can hear it in every breath. Because sometimes the most beautiful music isn't created by instruments or voices, but by the rhythm of love refusing to be silenced. Sometimes a machine designed to sustain. Life becomes a device that sustains connection, and sometimes a daughter's willingness to find beauty in the most clinical sounds can teach an entire world that love truly finds a way, not just to survive death, but to transform it into something that brings comfort to the living." Robert Martinez's final gift to his daughter wasn't just the 3 weeks of mechanical breathing that kept him alive. It was the understanding that love expresses itself in whatever form is available, and that the most precious lullabies are often the ones that come from the deepest places of loss and the highest peaks of devotion. In a television studio that day, the sound of a breathing machine became a hymn, a rhythm became a prayer, and a daughter's love became proof that some connections transcend every boundary, even the boundary between life and death.